Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. As Luis had already introduced myself, so I am here to talk about hearing loss and cognition. The purpose of this presentation is to show the importance of the early intervention in hearing loss, even in the early population. Because hearing loss is a consequential part of aging, and treating hearing loss more aggressively could help stave on cognitive decline and dementia. Hearing is one of the most noble senses. Its main function is linked to the acquisition and development of oral language, essential in the interpersonal relationships. There is a study that says that who have normal hearing are more active and walk more. So people feel more comfortable and secure when they can hear to monitor the environment. Here is. Sensory input provides the signals used by the brain when listeners understand speech and participate in social activities with other people and in a range of everyday situations. When sensory inputs are diminished, there can be short-term consequences to brain functioning, and long-term deprivation can affect brain neuroplasticity. Indeed, the association between hearing loss and cognitive declines in older adults is supported by experimental and epidemiologic evidence, although the causal mechanisms remain unknown. These interactions of auditory and cognitive aging play out in the challenges confronted by people with age-related hearing problems when understanding speech and engaging in social interactions. It's necessary to highlight, as I also had already said, the importance of adopting a healthy aging perspective that focuses on facilitating active social participation by older adults. In this line, we can see, and it is an example, that loneliness and depression and hearing loss contribute and are factors of risk for dementia. Here in this graphic, it is, according to WHO, the World Health Organization, the prevalence of hearing loss, it is in 2018, there are an estimated, here, 466 million people with disabling hearing loss, with it is 93% more adults than children. And among these adults, we can see here that there are more males, 56% than female with hearing disabilities. And the prevalence of hearing loss for the children here, and also for according to different groups and regions, we can see here in this graphic, according to Central Asia and Africa, South Asia, Asia Pacific, here Latin America, Brazil, and East Asia. Okay. This is an article from commissions, the Lancet commissions, that they act in prevention, intervention, and care with dementia and their families that will transform the future society. Dementia. In 2015, 45 million people, and it is estimated in 2050, 150 million people. Affects the individuals who gradually lose their abilities as well as their relatives and other supporters. Global cost, 800 billion in 2015. So 85% of costs are related to family and social rather than medical care, by Livington et al. And here, this commission met to consolidate emerging knowledge about what can work and what individuals should do to prevent and manage dementia, particularly with the health system in high-income countries. This commission have extended available models of risk by including hearing loss derived from a new review and meta-analysis that we did for this report and social isolation. Because as I had already said, hearing loss make loneliness, isolation, and it's a factor risk for dementia. Is relatively new results of cohort studies that have investigated hearing have usually shown that even mild levels of hearing loss increase the long-term risk of cognitive decline and dementia in individuals who are cognitively intact but hearing impaired are at baseline. NIST and NIH, it identifies social isolation and peripheral hearing loss as potentially modifiable dementia risk factors. Potentially modified risk factors to dementia. Around 35% of dementia is attributable to a combination of the following 9 risk factors, that they are: education to a maximum of age 11 and 12 years, middle life hypertension, middle life obesity, hearing loss, late life, depression, diabetes, physical inactivity, smoking, and social isolation. By incorporating potentially reversible risk factors from different phases of the lifespan and not just old age, we are able to propose a novel life course model of risk from which population attributable fractions. In this table, it is the cycle of here. It is the cycle, the life cycle, and also here it is very small, but it's to highlight that we should intervene in hearing loss in middle age, which can provide better results. This table here, we can also see that hearing loss is the third. Hearing loss is the second most prevalent chronic disease, and the third lived more years with disabilities. And according to this table also, we can intervene in people, in adult people, around 55 and 65 years old, that it's very important that they are in their activity life, and it is better for their results. And this is 35% of this study. Importantly, modifying contextual factors for removing barriers and or enhancing supports can facilitate healthy functioning for an individual. Ideally, healthy functioning would result if personal resources and supportive physical and social environments were optimized to offset the potentially negative consequences of biological impairments. From an ecological perspective, an optimized person contact fit would promote healthy adaptation, enabling the person to cope successfully and achieve their goals without stress. Health and hearing cognition. Health has been defined as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Health has been redefined as the capacity of people to adapt to, respond to, and control life's challenges and changes. Importantly, hearing health needs to be thought of as a part of this capacity of people to live their lives optimally. We are poised to reinvent hearing health care for older adults by adopting a healthy aging approach. Here it is a study, self-reported hearing loss, hearing aids, and cognitive decline in elderly adults. Cognitive decline was measured using the Mini Mental State Examination, MMSE, administered follow-up visitor over 25 years. Self-reported hearing loss is associated with accelerated cognitive decline in older adults. Hearing aid use attenuates such decline. Therefore, we must intervene early so we can fix hearing aid and make properly a life for their adults. This is a study that working memory and age-related hearing loss. It is a study that Maria Cecília Martinelli is doing with some other doctorates and associated with FAPESP. And the subject, the objective is to examine the relationship between working memory and the benefit in mood and quality of life promoted by acoustic stimulation through the use of hearing aids in hearing impaired elderly, and its relation with sex, age, education, and socioeconomic status. It is not finished yet, so they don't have the results. They are still in progress, this study. Hearing loss extends beyond hearing sensitivity in many ways. The complexity of hearing loss relates to the complexity of life. Meetings, restaurant visits, family patients, etc. are all often set in noisy or reverberant surroundings. To hold conversations in this challenging situation, it is generally recognized that listeners rely on peripheral hearing sensitivity, centrotemporal sensitivity, and cognitive skills. When bottom-up signal processing degrades, such as through hearing loss, top-bottom cognitive processing becomes more important. And the final comment here is importantly modifying contextual factors by removing barriers and or enhancing supports can facilitate healthy function for an individual. Ideally, healthy functioning would result if personal resources and supportive physical and social environment were optimized to offset the potentially negative consequences of biological impairments. From an ecological perspective, an optimized person context fit would promote healthy adaptation, enabling the person to cope successfully and achieve their goals without stress. Reposition hearing health care within the broader context of healthy aging. Healthy aging here, people with elderly, hearing loss. So when you have the hearing loss, keeping socially engaged and active, or healthy economic outcomes, mortality, cognitive, avoiding dementia, avoiding injury, maintaining physical mobility and activity. So everything that I said before, when you have the hearing loss and you have all these kind of disease because of healthy aging, we have to interview with hearing aids in order to promote better life to the population. Thank you very much. And just the final sentence is that, so with a very simple intervention, we could make a big difference, improving quality of life. That's it.
I have a curiosity. Is there a difference between hearing loss and disabling hearing loss? How do you identify disabling hearing loss? Do you have to mix audiometry with the ability to perform, or what?
Yes, because hearing, we do a lot of tests. So we have the hearing, and we have the comprehension, and we have different types or different exams that we do in audiology tests. So hearing loss is just when we see the
graphic.
Yes, the graphic, and we can measure the hearing loss, if it is severe, if it is mild, if it is
peripheral or central
or neurosensitive, and that's it. And according to the brain, then we have all the disability in the path from the cochlea until the brain. So it is different.
So the disabling hearing loss is when it's affecting function of the brain.
Yes.
Apart from
not hearing. Yes,
okay.
because hearing, we have hearing and we have comprehension. So we hear with the ear and we comprehend with the brain.
So disabling is not comprehending.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. What?
So the comprehension that happens in the brain,
yes.
Like there are people, you talk to them and they don't comprehend, you think, okay, why don't you get an aid? And they don't need it. But does that non-comprehension more associated with dementia, or?
Yes, we are studying if hearing loss have anything to do with dementia, or my study it is with tá bom. O que eu ia falar é o seguinte, a gente está estudando, e a Cecília é uma das pessoas que mais estudam a parte da deficiência auditiva e a cognição, porque ela acha que, é o que a gente sempre fala, que se você não está inserido em uma sociedade, você se isola, quanto mais você tem essa isolação e o loneliness, e você fica deprimido, e sim, isso cria demência.
Não, mas eu não sei se você entendeu o que ela falou, porque ela falou assim, se você pega uma pessoa que não está compreendendo, não necessariamente ela não está escutando, né? Ela pode não estar compreendendo por um problema.
Então, sim, porque
essa que é a questão dela.
Sim, não. São duas coisas diferentes.
Isso.
Ela pode ouvir, mas ela pode não compreender. E a compreensão é um outro exame.
Mas ela pode não compreender e não estar sem audição, né?
Ela pode não compreender e estar com audição boa.
Você está
falando? Sim,
claro
isso
que ela está falando.
Sim.
Então,
pode,
você tem uma pessoa que não compreende, não necessariamente ela precisa de um aparelho auditivo.
Não, por quê? Porque a compreensão não é aqui. A compreensão é
that's it. So she's saying
no
that
caminho.
not comprehending not necessarily means not hearing. You know, comprehension is a brain function. So not necessarily a person that doesn't comprehend needs a hearing aid. That's what.
Porque hearing aid just give amplification. That's it.
But I think she asked that if dementia is more associated with that part of.
Oh, I see. So, é
um risco, é um dos riscos da demência. a gente fala isso por causa da isolação, porque a pessoa ela se isola e ela fica completamente fora, e por causa da idade, apesar de que existe demência um pouco mais de adultos mais jovens, então acontece que sim, a gente acha que a deficiência auditiva, pelos estudos, é um dos fatores de risco para a demência, porque quem não escuta acaba não usando tanto o cérebro.
Yeah,
ou tem que usar o cérebro com mais força, entendeu? Com mais...
Yeah, apparently hearing loss leads to non-comprehensive comprehension, but basically because it leads to isolation of the person doesn't compute nicely anymore, and then the risk for dementia increases.
Can the computer help in this case?
Can the computer help in this case?
I don't know. Should be another study. Should be another study. Why
Your
not?
study, right? Your study where the computer help people.
Yeah. Maybe
You
it.
don't need to hear. You don't need to necessarily
No,
hear
you don't
it.
need to hear. You just have to read and to
Browse,
understand.
Right, browse.
Yeah,
Yes.
we can do that.
Yes. We can. Yes, we can do something.
Let me tell a story. I have had a meeting 2 years ago with Herton Koifman. Herton Koifman is a professor in the Federal University of Paraná, and he came, and he's an otorrinolaryngologist, and he asked me the same question. He told about his mother. My mother, I make the test with her. I made the test with her, and he's not understanding. She's hearing but not understanding. Yes. And we finished an article now changing the outcome. It's you are beginning dementia, so you don't understand. You don't process. No, we inverted all the we made a mess with this thing, and we found something interesting. And he asked me to go to Curitiba to teach how to use computers to enhance cognition, and then for them to listen better, because he showed me the same curve of hearing loss. And after cognitive stimulation, the guy is hearing better, and the curve didn't change.
As well, or just hearing better?
So it probably is a two-way.
Understanding or just hearing?
No, I'm using the clinical term. For example, if they are not understanding or listen, they do the same. They do the same. It's clinically, and I'm saying, they started to say to you, in their opinion, they are listening better, because you cannot differentiate, but using the audiometry, it was the same. And then the guy started to read your lips, to pay attention, to the context. The guy must say that, and then it's a new word from the end, from cognition to
Hearing lips.
for example, exactly.
It's a very nice
I only wanted to thank you. What's your name?
Loretta.
Loretta, thank you for the presentation. And I was wondering if you have ever thought about the opposite hypothesis that is what André is saying, that the cognition impairment, the central cognitive impairment, can give the person the sensation that the person is having a hearing loss. And there is a perception of hearing loss. And then we went to data, we used data from the ELSA study, which Luis knows, that British cohort, Luis? The ELSA data from the British cohort, they have 16 years of follow-up, and we found that we excluded all the people with hearing loss in the beginning.
Yes.
And then we saw that people that started to have cognition decline, they had a higher probability to start to feel hearing loss 2 years later. So we inverted, and then we found it. But it's very, yeah, we found this with observational.
Eles depois tiveram a sensação de estar com perda?
Yeah, that's what we found, but it's only subjective measures, okay? We found that people that started to remember less words, which means they are starting to have memory. Impairment, 2 years later, they start to feel hearing loss. They start to rate that hearing worse.
Audiology.
We don't have the audiometry to prove, because they didn't do the audiometry.
Ela tem a sensação, mas na verdade no exame ela só
Yeah,
está compreendendo.
yeah.
Ou o exame não mostra isso. Mas é uma coisa.
It's very interesting, but
Yes, we need more studies.
it's very difficult to publish. It was rejected, this paper, because they don't believe.
You didn't have the audiometry. Okay, Loretta, thank you very much.